Shalom. This is Mary Omni from the house of King David, the woman of Galatians 4:4 that gave birth to the newly born Emmanuel. I'm asking you to consider that I may be who I say that I am. While you believe everything blindly you see on television, I have to ask you to just consider that I may be the woman of Revelations 12. This is a republic notice coming from the Constitutional Supremacy Clause, the woman of Galatians 4:4, who gave birth to the Christ. This notice is on behalf of Katherine Jackson and the Jackson family, Reby, Latoya, Janet, and all full black constitutional citizens of the Jackson family, including Mr. Joe Jackson, but especially Mr. Joe Jackson and Mrs. Katherine Jackson. It has come to my attention that in corporate doctrine contractors, which are supposedly those who handling the estate of Katherine Jackson, and it is her estate. She was the first investor in Michael. She gave birth to the all persons born Michael Jackson. She named him. She is the first investor in Michael. She does not have to share any wealth with anyone unless they can prove they have a contract higher than her constitutionality. She is the supremacy clause. That means no contracts can equal her. She's a descendant of the 3/5, and she received her 14th citizenship in 1868, which means that the 14th became non-consented. She is an inheritor. Inherit. She couldn't consent, as the Supreme Court of the United States of America, which was a constitutional Supreme Court in 1857. This was prior to the hijacking under in corporate doctrines. So before even the U.S. corporation. In 1857, Judge Taney said that Dred Scott had no legal rights. That means Dred Scott had no legal rights to consent to the 13th or the 1866 Civil Rights Act or the 1867 Alaska Purchase, that's in between the 13th and 14th Amendment, or the 1868 14th Amendment, or the 1870 15th Amendment, which means they're all non-consented amendments, which means they belong to non-consenters only. And 3/5 beyond a shadow of a doubt couldn't consent. And the Supreme Court termed it correctly. No legal rights to consent. They didn't use the words consent, but no legal rights mean that you don't have the right to consent to anything. So you inherit. But then you got inherited legal non-consent jurisdiction because it's constitutionalized. And then you can't turn it around as much as they want to turn it around and forget blacks are cemented in this Constitution and forget blacks are married to the Constitution and forget blacks are married to the land. It's not anything they can do because the 13, 14, 15 are non-consented amendments. They tried to overturn them before, but they're non-consented. They're untouchable. They're Teflon. They can't touch them. So the embezzlers of Katherine Estate trying to use these in corporate doctrine children, Paris and Michael Prince and Blanket to somehow say that they got contract authority of her estate is a joke. See, we don't have to know that we don't have to prove whether Michael Jackson was the father or not. That's irrelevant. What we do know is no constitutional citizen is them children mother. And they was born under corporate doctrines, which means contracts outside of constitutionality. See, Michael had to jump over the Jerusalem wall to even make them marry Elisa Marie or marry whoever their mother was, Debbie Rowe. So therefore, all the wealth he could not take with him, that wealth reverted back to Katherine. You cannot transfer constitutional wealth. You can didn't jump over the wall. You jump into debt and you make bond children. Paris Jackson needs to know she's a bond child because she's going to be controlled by Dracon. She's already setting up to expose herself to be one who would try to put all the Jacksons' business out and try to use Babylon against the Jacksons. It's not just her doing. She's going to be controlled by Dracons. So she is really somewhat innocent in it, but she cannot be underestimated because she's growing up, and she's growing up thinking she has authority over Katherine Jackson. And someone need to let her know she was born a dead bond child. Her mother is in a corporate doctrine bond woman. She's born a bond child. Sarah said no bond children would be heirs with her Isaac. Katherine Jackson and her full black children and full black grandchildren are Isaac heirs. There are no bond children of Isaac heirs. I don't care whether Michael Jackson said there was his children or not. It was not his wealth to give away. He had a 500-year investment constitutionally in him, and then he had his mother investment. So before even any wealth belongs to Paris, so-called Jackson, that wealth will belong to constitutional citizens first. That's how far out of the contract she is. She is really a charity case, a strictly charity case. Her and her brother and her other brother are in corporate doctrine. They have no constitutionality. They are strictly a charity case. And they're using Katherine wealth. That wealth is Katherine's because, see, Katherine is a non-consenter and she didn't consent to no contract with Babylon. And Michael may have, but it's Katherine's wealth. It all reverted back to her. She's the supremacy clause. Michael Jackson can't even top her contract. She's the supremacy clause. All wealth reverted back to her. So what these estate executors are doing is embezzling money from her and using these stringy-haired white children to try to use the public to hijack her republic wealth. They are trying to hijack her republic wealth, and they hijacking it and they embezzling, and they using her wealth to float Sony, who is going into debt. Without Katherine wealth, Sony is a debtor. Katherine Jackson owns the whole Sony corporation, her and her husband Joe Jackson. And if anything happened to them, it will go to the eldest daughter Rebe, the eldest son, if the son is not a Babylon whore. But Katherine Jackson children, male children, seem to have all made children with bond woman. So therefore they jumped over the 15th Amendment. Their 15th Amendment, they hung themselves and jumped over the 15th Amendment New Jerusalem wall. So they gave up their vote on anything to create bond children of Babylon. Some of them have Arab children, some of them have white children, some of them have Hispanic children, and some of them have this. They have everything but constitutional children. Just like Michael Jackson, they don't have constitutional children. So we know that Rebe have constitutional children. She married a constitutional man, and her constitutional children are full Judah. So Rebe is a natural heir if anything happened to Katherine Jackson or Joe Jackson. And really, Katherine Jackson has all say so 100% on everything on that estate. And the one simple thing I will ask any judges, attorneys, prosecutors, or anything in this case to prove Katherine Jackson is not a constitutional citizen, and then prove you have a contract higher than a constitution. If you can't do that, leave that woman and her money alone, as you will be charged with embezzlement and a permanent prison sentence, a lifelong prison sentence for hijacking constitutional property and embezzlement and larceny. For more information, go to JahClue at blogspot.com. JahClue at blogspot.com. All this can be proven. It is written, and I am a constitutional adjuster and a constitutional attorney of law, not at law. At law occupies space to hijack. That's what the Bar Association does, and they get their judges and everything in cahoots. They the bar to Constitution. They want a bar, and they all at law and hijacking, taking up space, and they occupiers. At law, occupying Constitution and blocking it. That's what the Bar Association is. It's to bar the Constitution. They're all trained to bar the Constitution. I am of law, which is of measure. measurement. And of measurement, the embezzlers of Katherine estates and all the judges have no supreme contractual to be bothering this octogenarian. They are committing larceny, perjury, and they are embezzling wealth to just throw to debt contractors. Paris is permanent debt contractor. She can't hold no wealth, and none of them Babylon bond children can hold wealth because they born debtors from a bond woman, Debbie Rowe. She's an in corporate doctrine bond woman. She never had no constitutionality. Therefore, it is no need to throw away wealth to bond children. The only one can hold that wealth is Judah, because they debt free. They couldn't consent to wealth, and that's the full black children of Katherine Jackson and her full black grandchildren, who are Judah, the first heirs of any estate that is constitutional property. And it all is constitutional property. This is Mary Omni. Shalom.